Becerra versus Hilton is official, and the first thing on my desk for the general is an FPPC filing that doesn't quite say what everyone's been saying all week. If you're just joining, California's race to replace term-limited Newsom went from a 61-candidate scramble to two, Xavier Becerra and Steve Hilton. Hilton's been demanding a direct fight and slamming Becerra's business backing as establishment politics, while Becerra spent the primary locking up institutional support in the Democratic field. Now it's a 5-month general.
This is the California governor's race. Today, the structured donor map and a step back on what a governor can actually deliver on housing. Spoiler, it's less than either of them promised.
NBC News writes,
Two Democrats, former Cabinet Secretary Xavier Becerra and billionaire Tom Steyer, and one Republican, Trump-endorsed commentator Steve Hilton, separated themselves from a large pack that includes Democrats like former Representative Katie Porter, State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond, former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, and San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan, as well as Republican Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco.
NBC's got it at 99% in now. Becerra, 28.1, Hilton, 24.7, Steyer at 22.8 and out. So that's the matchup, Becerra versus Hilton in November.
Steyer misses by under 2 points. A billionaire's self-funded campaign falls short of the GOP guy by a 0.9. That spread says a lot.
And it's a top-2 system, so party never saved Steyer. Hilton just outvoted him. Two Democrats nearly locked the GOP out, and instead the GOP edged a Democrat.
Here's what I'm watching. Steyer's 22.8 doesn't vanish. That's a climate and criminal justice block with nowhere obvious to go. Becerra wants it, but does he excite it?
3.4 points separating first and second. Anybody calling this decided in June is reading a primary turnout sheet, not a general.
Exactly. 5 months, a whole new electorate, and not one general election dollar spent yet. Don't freeze this thing in amber.
Here's Andy Mack at Live Now from Fox.
Xavier Becerra and Steve Hilton have both advanced to the November 2026 general election in the race for California governor. This comes as the Associated Press projected Hilton to finish second and take the second and final spot in the November 2026 ballot. Becerra was projected to advance on June 5th.
It's official now. AP has Hilton in second, so November is Becerra versus Hilton, locked. The question we kicked around all week, is this even a real race? Now has an answer.
And Steyer's out in third. A guy spent damn near $190 million of his own money to finish behind a Fox News host. Let that sit for a second.
The most expensive bronze medal in California political history.
Here's what I actually want to know. Steyer's climate and justice donor base is suddenly homeless. Where does that money land in a Becerra-Hilton general? Treat that as a live money flow question.
Becerra cleared on June 5th. Hilton took until the count finished out. Now we can move past who advanced and ask what either of them can actually deliver on the promises they made to get here. FPPC writes,
The lists below reflect top contributors as reported by committees that have raised at least $1 million and are primarily formed to support or oppose a state ballot measure or a candidate for state office in the June 2026 primary election.
Okay, here's the number that jumps off the FPPC page. $50.8 million spent to oppose Tom Steyer. A coalition decided burying Steyer was job one. You can't just call that pro-Becerra money.
And it worked. Steyer finished third and he's out, like we heard earlier. But look at the asymmetry. 10.3 million reported to support Becerra versus more than 50 million aimed at taking Steyer down.
Right, and Mahan sitting on 16.8 to support. Swalwell 12.8. There was real money behind candidates who didn't make the top two. That's a lot of donors now looking for a new home in November.
Which messes with the tidy anthropic cluster story we've been telling. The structured FPPC view doesn't make that disappear. It shows Becerra's reported support number is smaller than the money spent knifing his biggest rival.
And that opposition spending, where does it go now that Steyer's gone? You don't raise $50 million to be a spoiler killer and then sit out a 5-month general.
From California Secretary of State.
I've spent my entire career holding those in power accountable when they lie or break the rules. As governor, I will go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump and anyone who tries to harm California families. As a member of Congress, I took on billionaire CEOs and incompetent Trump officials, using a whiteboard to show the facts and expose corruption and cheating.
Here's the odd artifact. Katie Porter didn't advance, but her candidate statement is still sitting in the official voter information guide. Whiteboard, toe-to-toe with Trump, I cannot be bought, the whole accountability pitch. So we've got a lane with no candidate standing in it. Now watch which finalist absorbs it, Becerra or Hilton, and which donor network follows the voters who liked that framing.
Read the actual statement, though. I refuse donations from corporations and lobbyists. That's a direct shot at exactly the coalition that's now backing Becerra. So those Porter voters don't just slide to the Democrat by default. The anti-PAC, anti-Sacramento money pitch. Some of that energy could just as easily go looking at Hilton's affordability talk. That's a turnout problem you can measure, not just a vibe.
And notice the specific promises baked in there. Eliminate income tax under $100,000, build affordable housing, sweeping stuff for an office with real limits.
Right, hold that thought, because whether a governor can even deliver any of it is its own conversation coming up. When candidates like Becerra and Hilton promise to fix housing costs, homelessness, or gas prices, how much can a governor actually pull off solo? And how much are they selling us something they can't deliver alone?
It's a mixed picture. The honest answer is, governors have real tools, but they're limited, and it depends on the promise. Take housing. The Public Policy Institute of California notes that California home values are more than twice the national median, about $776,000 versus $370,000 nationally, and home ownership is the second lowest in the nation. A governor can push state agencies to cut permitting red tape and use the bully pulpit on cities, but local governments still control zoning, and the legislature controls the budget dollars for affordable housing programs. In his Cal Matters Q&A, Becerra says he'd declare a state of emergency on housing costs to unlock executive powers and unstick about 40,000 shovel-ready units. That is real authority. It still runs into local approval processes and possible court challenges. On gas prices, California has already passed a law giving the state power to penalize oil companies for price spikes. Cal Matters has reported those powers haven't been activated yet, so the law is there. The governor would have to choose to use it. Homelessness may be the hardest one because it runs through state funding, county service delivery, city land use decisions, and federal policy. Newsom spent 7 years on it, and Cal Matters noted his homelessness pledges remain unfinished heading into his final year.
So on housing specifically, if a governor declares an emergency and tries to override local zoning, doesn't that just end up in court for years?
That's exactly the risk. PPIC frames the next governor's housing challenge as a coalition-building problem with cities and the legislature, on top of any big executive move. Becerra with emergency powers, Hilton with cutting what he calls regulatory obstacles. They're both betting they can move faster than the legal and political friction. One early test: does the winner actually use the gas price penalty law that's already sitting there unused? That's a lower litigation way to see whether campaign promises turn into governing.
If you're following California's governor's race, you might also like San Francisco Politics and Urbanism Daily, covering City Hall, muni, housing abundance, public safety, schools, and small business permitting. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. What we're watching next: Xavier Becerra and Steve Hilton meet voters again on the November 2026 general election ballot. You'll find links to every story from today's briefing in the show notes. So if one caught your ear, you can go straight to the source. That's California governor's race for today. This is a Lantern podcast.